Dear viewers, today we have a unique guest, Mrs. Connie Whitfield, in other words, Honorable Constance Harriman Esquire. As a political wife, she is Mrs. Connie Whitfield, married to former Congressman Ed Whitfield, who served in the House of Representatives for 21 years, representing the 1st District of Kentucky, and leading the Turkish caucus in the Congress for many years. He has been and still is one of the biggest political supporters of Turkey, and both Whitfields are also great friends of Turkey. In her own political life, Mrs. Whitfield is the Honorable Constance Harriman Esquire, with an illustrious public life. She also has strong connections to Turkey, which started many years ago when she was 18. During her over 25 years of legal, public policy, and management experience, Ms. Harriman worked extensively with the Congress, federal agencies, the media, and advocacy groups. She has delivered speeches throughout the United States and abroad. During the Bush and Clinton administrations, she was one of the 5 full-time board directors of the Export-Import Bank. Previous to that, Ms. Harriman served as Assistant Secretary for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks at the U.S. Department of Interior. She oversaw policy, budget, and administrative responsibility for 25,000 employees, 107 million acres of land, and a budget of $2 billion. Ms. Harriman played a key role in several interagency and international organizations. She led the American delegation to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and served as the U.S. Commissioner to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, a U.S.-Canadian advisory board. Ms. Harriman's other government experience includes high-level legal positions at the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Interior. She also worked with the California law firm of Shepard Mullen, where she practiced corporate and securities law and commercial and antitrust litigation. And horse enthusiast, Ms. Harriman served as vice chair of the Kentucky Horse Racing Authority from 2003 to 2007. She was simultaneously chair of the Kentucky Equine Drug Research Council. She was passionate about drug reform and racetrack safety. She convened monthly meetings of the council that in less than 1 year produced new comprehensive equine medication regulations. Previous race day medication policy was informal and lacked the force of law. For over 10 years, Ms. Harriman was a consultant to the nonprofit Humane Society of the United States and Humane Society Legislative Fund. She successfully lobbied members of Congress to advance federal legislation related to animals, especially to horses. She was able to work with all sectors of the horse racing industry in many state racing jurisdictions. Ms. Harriman's work in the public and private sectors earned her admission in the Marquis Directory, who is so in America. She is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Stanford University, from where she holds bachelor's and master's degrees, has another master's degree in international law from Georgetown University, and a law degree from University of California, Los Angeles. I was tremendously impressed with Ms. Harriman's education, qualifications, and accomplishments. But what was dear to my heart, both Whitfield's attachment to Turkey and their love of animals. I have followed with gratitude Congressman Whitfield's pro-Turkey resolutions, speeches, statements in the Congress, and trips to Turkey over the many years. As to the animals, I always remember Gandhi's words. The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. I think if one has compassion for the weakest, then that compassion is far-reaching to all. Before we begin, I want to remind our audience that we just celebrated July 4th, the most important date in the U.S. history. On July 4th, 1776, 13 colonies declared their independence from the British monarch and became a sovereign nation state. In 1939, the young Turkish Republic issued a stamp to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the U.S. independence, with pictures of Kemal Atatürk and George Washington on the stamp. And on July 4th, it was wonderful to see the happy crowds in the mall in Washington, celebrating the day free from COVID and politics. And before we begin, I would like to thank our task technical team located in Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Tekirdağ, and New Jersey, who make this program possible, a truly global network. Now we give the floor to Mrs. Whitfield.
And my dog, Henry.
Yes, yes, most important guest, yes. So tell us about your early Turkish connections. That was very surprising for me.
Well, it was actually surprising for me as well. I had a mother who absolutely loved to travel. And I was doing my sophomore year abroad at Stanford's campus in Florence. And my mother said, how would you like to extend your stay and we will go visit Turkey? And she, of course, had read many, many books and was very, very well versed in its history and culture. So we went in 1967, which was over a half a century ago, I hate to say, but nevertheless, that's how far back it was. And it was a magical time. There was still lots of burning of coal. And I can remember the city of Istanbul was very gray. But we went to Ephesus as well. And it was just a remarkable time. We had a marvelous guide, a Turkish guide. And so I always wanted to return.
So did you travel at other parts of the country at that time?
No, we didn't. We stayed in Ephesus and
Istanbul.
Yeah.
I came in 1960 to the United States with a Fulbright, and it was such a different country then. It's amazing how fast it changed. So did you go back after that? Did you go afterwards as Mrs. Whitfield?
I did go back as Mrs. Whitfield a few months after I became Mrs. Whitfield, but it was 24 years later. I can't believe it took so long, but I was asked to give a speech in Izmir, and my husband and I had recently married, and so I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to introduce him to Turkey. So we went, and he fell in love with it.
Really? So you were instrumental in showing him, taking him to Turkey, and he did like it.
Yes, I was instrumental in getting him to Turkey, but I have to say at the same time, the generals with whom my husband was working had always emphasized the importance of Turkey because of NATO and everything. So he wanted to go, he was curious, but I was the opportunity for him to go.
And then you did so after 24 years, and then you started going frequently, didn't you?
After 1995, we went twice a year for 20 years.
Oh, really?
Minimum, yes. And it was a combination of, Ambassador Kandemir, who was the first Turkish ambassador we met in 1995, was wonderful. He really changed our life because he asked my husband if a wonderful young woman, Turkish woman who was not visiting, she was a student at Georgetown, could intern in my husband's office. And Ed said yes, and she came, and we met her family, and then through them we met other Turkish families, and that started lifetime friendships. So we would go to Turkey sometimes for political reasons. Ed would go to meet with the prime minister or president, or we would go to visit friends, or we would go to conferences held by the Turkish business associations. We had many opportunities.
Yes.
And we always said yes. So
I remember it was always in the air, and we read about it. And then, of course, the Cyprus trip was an amazing support for Turkey and this poor island that was divided into two for a good reason, as you know, because of otherwise we would have been wiped out, the Turks.
It's really interesting. I can't find the poll, but we went to Cyprus in, let's see, I think it was 2009, and we directly flew from Turkey directly to northern Cyprus, bypassing the airport in southern Cyprus, which of course was under Greek control, and it infuriated the Greek Cypriots. It infuriated the very powerful Greek lobby in the United States, but it made the Turks, both in Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots, very happy. And there was a poll that was taken shortly afterwards, and I think the United States was at its highest rating among Turks than at any other time.
Yeah, and then of course we follow the report cards that our ethnic adversaries give to the politicians. Did you know they keep report cards? And ANKA, the Armenian National Committee, we always follow their report cards. Whenever somebody gets F, it must be a good friend of Turkey, and vice versa. It is funny. I mean, you know, to tell the truth, this ethnic activity really got the Turks involved in politics. You know, our political system very different in Turkey than here, and we were not involved. We weren't involved. When we started getting annoyed, I wrote letters to the newspapers, this and that. But we said the bottom line is to get politically involved, be part of do your citizenship job and get out there and do lobbying, reach out. And we had, as you know, Lincoln McCurdy, wonderful, he did a wonderful job. And I'm sure he'll come back. He's taking a little break now. I don't know if you know the stories behind.
Yes, I do.
Separately one day. It's nothing to do with Lincoln. Anyway, so as you went over the years, what differences did you see in Turkey in terms of material development, in terms of people? I mean, our population increased, universities increased, a lot of good things happened, but you know, there is a difference in the political atmosphere too. So what was, you know, you saw the whole development over the years, twice a year. So give us a little bit your impression.
Well, I would say in the early years, I think maybe people were a little bit more formal. And oftentimes when we would visit Turkey, there would be economic issues, rampant inflation. I can remember when a dervish came to Turkey, and it was so interesting because for some reason I was in the bazaar, and he had arrived recently, and everybody was so joyful and hopeful. And I walked by every stall in the bazaar, watching him on television. And everybody had huge smiles on their faces, huge smiles. But I think in the earlier years, I do remember perhaps there was a little bit more economic turmoil. And the Turkish people have always been tremendously friendly as far as visits. My goodness, they're so hospitable. I think in recent times, how do I put it? I feel a little more constrained than I used to. And I always enjoy going to Turkey for intellectual reasons, for my health, actually. My doctors always say to me, when I come back from Turkey, you're in the best health you've ever been. Because I swim in the sea and I'm with my friends and I eat Turkish food and I'm happy. I'm happy. So, I mean, I can't really, I will say that, you know, Turkey, of course, my husband and I were very involved in trying to help Turkey get into the EU. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I even confronted certain diplomats at parties and said, you know, you're being hypocritical. And I think that after Turkey was really given the runaround, which they were, and the bar kept being raised and changed, and Turkey was operating in good faith. I don't think some other people were. I think that changed things for some people. I think they sort of lost faith in the West, and they were disillusioned. I don't really know how people feel about that today.
I think people are still look at Europe because we have a good trade agreement, a lot of trade, a lot of travel. Also, the refugee issue now, another support has come from Europe for the refugee issue. Turks are not as totally excited about Europe as they were in the past. But still, Europe is extremely important for Turkey because of its standards. Standards in governance, standards in standards and rules and regulations in many aspects of public life. So they look at it. But now I think they're wizened and they look at the East too, because Turkey is really, you know, cliche. But bridge is not, for Turkey, bridge is not a cliche. It is somewhere between East and West, and we don't know which one we are, but we are now getting now an identity that covers both.
Yes.
We are accepting that identity, that we are not totally Western, we are not totally Eastern. So, but I think I'm always very hopeful, and things are moving in many good ways, but we don't hear the news as much here. But when you go to Turkey, you see the progress in many aspects. And you know the women's issues you brought up. Actually, yes, there was a very sad anecdote you saw, but it's not like that anymore, or it was just once, because you go to Nişantaşı or you go to beaches, everybody's allowed to do whatever they can. Yes, in the smaller communities, there is more of a pressure, more conservatism. But Turkey, 83 million people, you know, the city people are much more, they're not huge in number. We are not an urban country. It was mostly inland. So it is coming out gradually. There are 200 universities, and the cities, they tell me, I haven't been there. I go to Antalya, Istanbul, and Assos, Ayvalık. That's where my relatives are. The cities are developing at a great rate, and then the urbanization and industrialization is coming. So it has it. So I look at it that way. Yes, we have problems. Yes, we do have issues we need to resolve. But as a Turkish American, for me, the relationship within the U.S. is extremely, extremely important because it's a long-standing relationship, and U.S. is a good country. You know, yes, you can have dealings with other countries, but this is more than just plain dealings. So, what do you feel? What do you feel that about that relationship now? There are a little ups and downs, but I send you some articles. So what is your feeling?
Well, I think if you're talking about relations between the heads of state, I think in the past it's probably been better. Having said that, it's so interesting. To me, it's always a question of, are you talking about the diplomats, the heads of state, or are you talking about the people, the average person on the street? I think if you're talking about visitors or students or tourists, I don't think there's any change. I think people are as welcome here, maybe more so, from Turkey. And I don't feel any hostility when I go to Turkey, certainly. But if you look at a much higher political level, I think relations are strained right now. And I certainly feel that if there is any explanation, we need to look at both countries. I don't think any one country is responsible for it. I think there could be changes on both sides. Yeah. I also feel that the United States has always suffered from ignorance of the culture and history of other countries. I feel that very strongly. And I wish that our statesmen were better informed about Turkey.
Yeah, well, you are dealing with 200 countries in the world in international relations. Of course, it is going to be not easy to get into depth of a country's culture and past. But I think with the Afghan situation, we are covering the airport, which is, I think, quite critical apparently, and there are many good things. For example, I understand we still do the construction. Part of the construction in the F-35s is manufacturing part is still going on. So some compromise will come to that, but we won't get into that too much.
Leave it to them. Leave it to them. Yeah, not us.
I'm going to animals.
But I do think I don't have answers, but I do feel that it would be best to focus on shared interests and perhaps to develop new shared interests. I think that when our relationships have been best is when we've worked together, and we do have much in common: NATO, trade, investment. Yes. And I think that cultural exchange, educational opportunities, the involvement of businesses, like the business conferences that the Turkish businesses had, were so helpful. I think for American businesses, I think we have to really focus on things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are many. What really was a little difficult for Turkey when the war started at our borders, the Iraq war, and then the Syrian upheaval, and then the Libya. Turkey had a lot of investments in Libya. I remember my brother-in-law, who is an architect, used to go there and did a lot of building projects. And when Gaddafi came down, Turkey lost a lot of investments. Yeah. And then Iraq war, but the Iraq war was okay. In northern Iraq, we had the Kurdistan, and Turkey was in extremely good terms with Iraqi Kurdistan. And everything was built by the Turks, the excellent relationship. But when the Syrian upheaval came, and then, of course, we got this PKK-related groups fighting the ISIS, which at the same time, it became a very, and I was listening to some of the political comments. That issue, more than anything else, which is really threatening security of Turkey, is the most important. If that gets resolved, I think that is a huge step forward. And so I think it will be, because I think Biden is trying to stop the forever wars or forever involvement.
Yeah.
Because it's really not doing anything for the U.S. It's not the oil anymore. It's not security there. So it's not, and the Arab countries are trying to come to this century. They are putting a big effort to move forward. So things will get better. But if we can get that terrible conflict there in the southeast border of Turkey, things will really improve a deal. I mean, that's what I hear, and that's my feeling too. Well, let me ask you about your other experiences with the ambassadors. So, Neset Kandemir, yes, he was wonderful. He loved dogs. Did you know?
Yes.
He had one at the embassy, and the other, our Ambassador Kılıç's wife loved dogs.
Yes, she and I talked about our dogs and
animal that she loved. So what other experiences you had with Ambassador Kandemir?
Oh, well, I just loved him. He was such a dear man, and he was so elegant, polite. He was sort of an old world ambassador in the best sense. I wish people today had his civility, and he was just a remarkable man. And as I said, he did change our lives by having this one Turkish intern come and work for Ed, because there was a domino effect. And we would have dinner with the intern and the ambassador and his wife frequently. And whenever we visited Turkey, we always tried to see him. And we saw him shortly before his death. So he was just a wonderful, remarkable role model, really, as to how a diplomat should behave. He was just so polite and pleasant and effective, but he was never bombastic or rude or raised his voice. So anyway, he was sort of to me, I always think of him sort of on a pedestal. But there were, let's see, 5 other ambassadors after him that whom Ed and I had the good fortune to spend a lot of time with. And Baki İlkin was next, and he was superb. He was very, very, very active, very progressive. He wanted the staff at the residence and the embassy to learn to speak English, and he really was very, very energetic and just worked. And I think was also extremely effective. His wife was very involved in the Washington, D.C. community. She published, I think, at least 2, maybe more cookbooks, Turkish recipes. Yes. And when he ended up at the United Nations representing Turkey, we maintained our contacts, and we would go and stay with them in New York and take long, long walks through the city with them, just having a wonderful time. And he was responsible for getting Turkey on the Security Council.
Yes.
Which was a huge deal, a huge accomplishment. And then, let's see, Ambassador Logolu was after after Baki İlkin. And he was so intellectual, brilliant, Brandeis, and very articulate. And they've all been wonderful in different ways. And the last one we knew well was the ambassador who just left, Ambassador Chilak. And then I've met the new wife of the ambassador, but I have not met him because I think he was with Erdogan at a conference.
Yeah, well, he travels a lot around the country. He wants to know the consulates and just travels a lot. So yes, we did I came to the Washington when Elekta was ambassador. He was excellent too, but Kandemir was unique, I have to admit. Yes, Baki Bey came, and every year, he was here 3 years. He didn't finish the 4th because he went back to Turkey and then come back to the UN. Baki Bey, every year he was here, there was a disaster. One year was the financial disaster,
Yes.
with a big problem. And the other one was a horrible earthquake. Was it, I think,
Yeah.
1999, was it? Something like that. Anyway, and then the other year was the Armenian issue, which became very close to passing. 2020, I remember that very well because I was at the Capitol Hill every day, and I'm sure Congress put a lot into it too. But in the last minute, it didn't pass. The way it didn't pass, there was an attack on a battleship, a U.S. battleship, SS Cole. I don't know whether you remember that.
Yes.
And I never forgot. It was October 17th or 18th, towards the end of the year, and it was going. It was so close to pass, and I think President Clinton, finally went to Congress and said, "Look, we are getting a lot of information about classified information about SS Cole." But if you pass this, it may, put that in a little bit of a danger, so it's better not to do that. And they stopped at 6 p.m. in the evening.
That's how Congress works.
Yeah, and it was like a very exciting story. But so poor Ambassador Ilkin had to, every year he had a huge issue to work with. And then, of course, with Ambassador Lowell, we had the Iraq issue, not passing the parliament. They wouldn't allow the soldiers. And, they handled it well. And Lowell was extremely skillful. One of those rare people who didn't say much. He said 3 words, and that was enough for him. Which with Turks, once we get the microphone, we never let it go. And then Namuktan, and we had Nabi Bey. Yes. Anyway, so
I'm looking forward. I hope to meet the new ambassador soon. I hope that my husband and I can take the ambassador and his wife out to dinner. And I think maintaining connections is very important. I know he's going to be very busy. He may not have time, of course.
Yeah. Connections, the personal relationships are so important. I find that in every situation, every case, it moderates you. It gives you a much better perspective before you generalize something.
Yes.
And it is extremely, I have a lot of Greek friends. I cannot curse and cuss Greeks when I get angry at them. I think of Demetra. We have a soprano. She's from Cyprus, southern part. I don't know whether you met her. She's in California. She sings the Turkish national anthem with great emotion. She's married to a northern Turkish Cypriot. And I remember Demetra, and I can't get mad at anybody, the Greek Cypriots or the Greeks, who sometimes do nasty things. So we all know. Anyway, so how did the animals?
How did the animals
develop? Animals start? Did you grow up with animals?
Well, yes, but mainly cats, and I loved my cats. But then we also had goldfish and guppies and hamsters, and I loved horses. I learned to ride when I was 3 years old. And I rode quite a bit, and then I went to programs to ride. I rode bareback, I rode English, I rode Western, and but I didn't have a passion for animals. And I think it's because my mother didn't really care for animals. Excuse me, my dog has made me, I think, a little allergic. I think when I became Assistant Secretary of Interior and I was responsible for the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Park System, I learned things. I became educated about our ecosystems, habitat, endangered and threatened species. I became very involved in the African elephant ivory issue. And I led the American delegation to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. And I will say that I was the one who got them, after 3 rounds of voting, to vote for a worldwide ban on the importation of African elephant ivory. And it worked. And it's eroded since then over the years. There have been exceptions and loopholes and this and the other thing. But when that ban was in place, that it had a direct impact on the poaching. And it diminished dramatically and immediately. And today, of course, nothing upsets me more than poaching, the poaching of wildlife, nothing. So it started with that, and then marriage to my husband, who is a huge lover of animals and lover of dogs in particular. So I started getting dogs for the first time. And then now we've had 3 dogs ever since we got married 30 years ago. So that had a big impact. And working with the Humane Society of the United States, I think, was the frosting on the cake. So I became more knowledgeable, became more active. I was very involved in trying to pass legislation on Capitol Hill. And it was my passion. It still is. We still rescue dogs, and we rescued probably 25 thoroughbred racehorses who'd been either heading for slaughter or left to rot. And we placed every horse, some of them as far away as Hawaii, with people we knew would take very good care of them.
Yeah, it is an uphill battle. The animal rights, again, the poaching, the trophy hunting, and I mean, in some countries they eat cats and dogs.
Yes.
I guess that's the need for protein for 1.5 billion people, but it is very disturbing.
It is, but that's their culture. They've grown up that way.
Yeah, but I know I follow the animal rights, the organizations. I'm a member of PETA. I renewed my membership at the Humane Society of the US again. There's a big fight in India, for example. India is very interesting because they respect the cows very much, but they treat their donkeys very badly, apparently.
Yes.
And I grew up with donkeys. I grew up in the island Heybeliada. Do you know there's a string of islands just outside of Istanbul? Have you visited them in Istanbul?
No, but I know about them.
Yeah, and there are 4 islands, and they are idyllic. And they don't have cars. They have horse carriages. So the nice little, fancy little carriages carried by horses. So we grew up with horses and donkeys, and they were the only transportation. So those animals are, of course, very dear to me. We used to feed the horses with the cube sugar they love and carrots, but cube sugar in their big mouths they would go. So it was, the love comes from the childhood, and then as you read more and more, it becomes part of your life. So what do you think? How is the progress going? It may go differently in different countries. So what is the, in Africa, for example, in Asia, in the US, how is the animal rights progress doing?
Well, I think in Africa, from what I see, I'm sort of obsessed about the poaching situation, and I don't see that it's improving. I think that we're losing our wildlife there, and I think that it's just we've lost the white rhino, and something that was a real setback for me personally was when the former president of Botswana retired, and his hand-picked successor did a flip, changed from how he was, and now basically allows poaching in Botswana. And that was sort of the stronghold because the former president was so adamant. He used to have armed guards around his rhinos, and he would have guards protecting. Well, I'll say this: he would fight off poachers with armed force, and it worked. But now he's gone, and his successor is not following his policy, and so I think there's been a tremendous falling off, at least in Botswana. I don't see that it's gotten better in Zimbabwe either. And Kenya, I believe, I probably shouldn't say this, but I believe that the involvement of the Chinese in Africa has harmed wildlife there.
Yeah. But it's getting better in the U.S., though, isn't it? I would think.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely better in the U.S. And I think
there's so much effort going on there.
In India, it depends who you're talking about. Are you talking about neutering and spaying animals? Definitely progress, I'd say, everywhere. If you're talking about cockfighting, that's a tough one, really tough. We've made some progress here in this country, but I'm not sure about outside. Dog farms in Korea, I think there's some progress there. I think there's a net gain overall worldwide. Yeah. And definitely huge improvements in this country. The outlawing of greyhound racing and the recent bill that was passed to deal with the drugging of racehorses.
Yes.
And puppy mills. I think people were so unaware of things like puppy mills and cockfighting and dog fighting. I think people in the United States are much better educated about the exploitation and suffering of animals. And I think there's been lots of legislation in the last 10 years that has really helped the plight of animals in this country.
You were with the Humane Society, both Humane Society for legislative issues too. Was there good funding? Did people respond to the letters to give?
Yes, they definitely did. They did at all levels. I mean, you can even see with politicians how much money they can raise when they just are getting $10 checks. If you get enough $10 checks, $25 checks, it adds up. But I think ultimately what allowed the Humane Society to do extremely expensive undertakings were big donors and people who were willing to give $1 million, very passionate people. And you'd be surprised how many there are in this country.
Yeah. Well, animals inspire you different feelings, totally different. You were asking me, I was reading, I will send you the article about the Ottomans' interest in animals. In Ottoman times, there were some humanistic poets who would
Yes.
write about the animals, the life of animals, the souls of animals.
Yes.
And they were ridiculed by the Europeans who thought, animals, Descartes, for example, thought animals are like machines. They don't feel pain or anything. So you're aware of that. So I was reading about.
They had no feelings, no sensitivity, no. I mean, it's so interesting. I was talking to a man in England a couple of years ago. He had 3 dogs, and he made the statement that dogs have no feelings. And he had just separated his 2 dogs who were jealous of each other. And I said to him, what is jealousy? That's a feeling.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely. It's unconditional love. It may not be feelings as we do, but they have unconditional love. The cats are not like that,
No.
Is that Churchill behind you? The figure?
Oh, no. You mean here?
No.
Oh,
the other
oh,
side.
here. Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Churchill. It's my Toby mug. These are 2 dogs. Dog. No, I'm doing it the wrong way. There. Dog paintings by John Eames, who's a famous British painter, artist, known for his painting of dogs, usually bigger canvases. But anyway.
Yeah.
One thing I meant to say when we were talking about relations between Turkey and the United States, which I left off, not deliberately, but the importance of having a very strong Turkish American community, which you are involved in. Your organization, when you co-chair the Turkish American National Steering Committee, I think it's so important to have that. And maybe you want to tell your audience a little bit more about that organization, but I think I wouldn't know you.
Oh, well, I'm a secretary of the organization. Well, this organization was really the Ambassador Kılıç, when he came in 2014. He saw the community was very polarized at that time. We had, according to political parties in Turkey, and everybody had their own corner. And because we have bigger issues than internal domestic politics. We have big foreign policy issues. We have the PKK, the Cyprus, the Armenian issue, the Aegean. I mean, we have we can at least unite and do advocacy on those issues. And we started doing that. The organization is welcome to anybody, regardless of their religious approach, whether they're conservative or liberal, or their political approach to the Turkish politics and the U.S. politics. There was a big polarization in the U.S. the last 4 years, as you know. And regardless of domestic politics of both countries, we work on, number one, U.S.-Turkish relations. And of course, associated with that are the foreign policy issues, like as I was talking about the southeast border. And so this organization does cultural programs, does 24-hour TV. It also does social services. It for example, provides the secular organizations I worked many years, there was below us. We didn't do such things. People would come, they would need housing. No, we would give some, do that. And but this organization believes in that. The members, because members are all kinds of members. There are very elite types, and there are types that came from the heart of Anatolia, successful in this country, but they are more down-to-earth people. Very happy that we include everybody. And in the beginning, people were annoyed that I am working with this type of organization. But people came around, and people came to participate in the programs now. So it is that's the philosophy. It's all inclusive. Its number one objective is to work with U.S.-Turkish relations and include everybody and make our voice stronger. So that's how we work. Anyway, so I'm glad you heard about it. And so we are getting board. Günay Evinç is
yes.
there, and he is, as you know, a very bright leader. And Dr. Halil Mutlu is our other co-chair, and he is a very, very bright, very mature person. So we do this, and we get along.
I think it's really important. I do. I think it's very important.
I thought so too, and in my old age, it helps, especially with the pandemic. We have the Skype, we have this TV, the Zoom, and the animals. Yes.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Pandemic, the animals. Well, we don't have an animal because it's a little too difficult, even for a cat to deal with a cat, because we keep them indoors, and then you have to change them. Litter. My husband is very particular, but I help the organizations and do the best. I was going to just say to you, I think Churchill said one day, she said, the dogs look up to us, the cats look down to us, the pigs treat us as equals.
That's because they have the same IQ that we do.
Yeah, have you heard that before? I thought it was so cute. But
no,
the cat...
Churchill was more of an animal lover than you or I.
Yes.
Besotted with animals, even flies and moths and all animals.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take more of your time. This was so nice. And thank you for taking the time and joining this program. And I hope we continue venues.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me remember my wonderful experiences with Turkey. It's made me very happy to recall the wonderful friendships and the wonderful moments that I've enjoyed while traveling there, and the wonderful people I know here, people like you.
Thank you. But I hope it continues. I really think that after this pandemic, perhaps, I mean, I hope you go to Turkey next year again. And I mean, the nature is so gorgeous there.
Oh, yeah.
And people are nice. So if you don't agree with some things, we just hope it's going to go better. But please remember, Turkey has a very short history of republic and a democratic system. It's only going to be 100 years in.
Well, we're not much further along.
Yes. But you know, Europe and England started with Magna Carta 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and look what they went through, what upheavals, and Europe too. So it takes time to self-discipline to come to that level of governing, and it will come, and it's getting better, I think.
Well, I look forward to my next trip to Turkey. I'll let you know. But I look forward to seeing you soon. Also.
Yes, definitely we'll get together soon. And thank you again. And big hugs, the biggest regards to Congressman, and little hugs to all the animals you have.
Thank you so much, Oya. Thank you for wonderful.
Thank you too. Thank you. Okay, we are done. This.